I said in the previous episode that Dark Passage is an interesting failure. I was right. I was also incomplete. Because I was watching the first time for what the first-person camera could and could not do. And what it could not do is easier to describe than what it could. The not working is visible in a way that the working is not. The working, when it works, disappears into the experience. I went back. I watched for the working. I want to describe what I found. In the previous episode, I described Dark Passage's first-person camera experiment. 56 minutes of a film in which you see what the protagonist sees, but you do not see his face. I described what fails. The conversation scenes, where the camera is too still, too steady, too much a machine to convincingly simulate the human eye in repose. I described what works, the physical sequences, the escape, the pursuit, the surgery under anesthetic. What I did not describe, the specific contract the film makes with the audience in its first frame. The first frame of Dark Passage is the protagonist's eye. Not the protagonist's face, his eye. Extreme close-up. The camera announces, "You are inside this person. You see what he sees. This is his eye, and it is your eye now." This announcement, a commitment. The audience, accepting it, enters a specific relationship with the film that is different from the relationship they have with any other film. In most films, you watch a character from outside. Dark Passage, you are the character. The contract. If you accept it, if you let the camera be your eye, the experience of the first 56 minutes is unlike anything else in cinema. Not better than other films. Different. The specific quality of difference. Intimacy. Not the constructed intimacy of a close-up that says, "Feel this." The structural intimacy of being inside. I described the escape from San Quentin, the pursuit through San Francisco, and the surgery as the moments that work. I want to go further. There are smaller moments throughout the first-person section that work in ways I did not give sufficient attention to. The moment when Parry first sees himself in a car mirror after the surgery. Only his hands, his bandaged face, the reflection suggesting the face that is not yet visible. The camera, his perspective. We see what he sees. We see a man who cannot see his own face, trying to understand what he now looks like from the evidence of his hands and the angle of the bandages. This is precise filmmaking. The camera is not showing us something. The camera is being Parry, trying to see himself and not being able to. The hunger of this moment. We also want to see his face. We have wanted to see Bogart's face since the first frame. This moment intensifies the wanting without satisfying it. The moment when Irene, Bacall, talks to Parry and he watches her face. The camera, his eyes on her. The specific quality of being watched, which I described in the previous episode, but now with added dimension. He is watching her from behind bandages. She cannot see his expression. He can see everything about her. The asymmetry, his vulnerability, her openness. Both visible in the single camera position. I described in the previous episode what the first-person camera does with Bacall. It creates intimacy, the quality of being seen rather than observed. I want to go further. The first-person camera does something with Bacall that no other film in the Bogart-Bacall series does. In To Have and Have Not, The Big Sleep, Key Largo, we observe the relationship from outside. We watch the chemistry. We see both people. In Dark Passage's first-person section, we are inside the relationship. We see Bacall the way Parry sees her, and the way Parry sees her. The way the camera holds on her face, the way it moves with her, the specific attention the camera pays to the smallest shifts in her expression. This is the visual language of someone who is falling in love. Not the dramatic visual language of falling in love. Not the swelling music, not the slow motion. The specific, ordinary visual language of attention. Someone who is falling in love pays attention to the person's face differently than someone who is not. The attention is fuller. The face contains more information. The smallest movement reads as significant. The first-person camera in the Bacall scenes is a camera that is paying this kind of attention. You see Bacall the way someone who is falling in love with her sees her. This is what no other camera position can give you. I described San Francisco in the previous episode as an obstacle course, the city as seen by a fugitive, reduced to its functional qualities. I want to add something. The first-person camera in San Francisco also does something that the objective camera cannot. It makes the city personal. Not the tourist's San Francisco, not the postcard. The specific San Francisco of this specific person moving through these specific streets on this specific night, with this specific body and this specific fear. The city as experienced, rather than the city as seen. This distinction, experienced versus seen, is the specific thing the first-person camera can achieve when it is working. The city experienced. The hills you feel in your legs, the specific angle of the street, the way a corner turns into something unexpected. These things cannot be fully shown from outside. They can be approximated from inside. Dark Passage approximates them. Not perfectly. The camera is still a machine, not a body. The approximation is partial, but in the night sequences, moving through San Francisco, the approximation is close enough to produce something genuinely different from the objective camera's version. You are not watching someone in San Francisco. You are almost in San Francisco. The almost, the specific achievement. The reveal of Bogart's face at the 56-minute mark. I described this in the previous episode as effective because the withholding has made the audience want to see the face. I want to describe something more precise about the reveal. When Bogart's face finally appears, full frame, the camera no longer pretending to be his eyes, but showing him from outside, the film changes register. Not the character, the film. Everything before the reveal, interior, you were inside. Everything after, exterior. You are outside again. The transition, you lose something. The intimacy of the first-person section, the specific closeness of being inside the protagonist's perspective, this is withdrawn when the camera becomes objective, and you notice the withdrawal. This is the specific achievement that I did not give adequate credit to in the previous episode. The reveal works not only because you wanted to see the face. It works because you can feel the loss of the interiority. The film has, for 56 minutes, given you something that films do not usually give. The reveal. The moment it takes it away. The taking away makes you understand what you had. Dark Passage was not a commercial success on its initial release in 1947. Critics were divided. Audiences were puzzled by the first-person section. The box office? Disappointing by the standards of a Bogart-Bacall film. And yet, the film has accumulated, over the subsequent decade, a specific cult following. People who seek it out. People who have seen it multiple times. People who regard it as one of the most interesting films in the Bogart canon. Why? The first-person camera. Specifically, the first-person camera as a conversation starter about what cinema is and can do. Dark Passage is the film that most precisely demonstrates the difference between the camera as window, you observe something through it, and the camera as body, you are inside something through it. Most films, window. Dark Passage, body, for 56 minutes. The people who have sought out Dark Passage and returned to it, people who are interested in the question of what cinema can do. Not the answer, the question. Dark Passage does not answer the question. It dramatizes the question. It shows what happens when you try to make the camera a body, and where that attempt succeeds and where it fails. The failure, visible and useful. The cult. The people who find visible and useful failure more interesting than invisible success. I described Agnes Moorehead's Madge Rapf in the previous episode as the film's villain. The woman who, out of unrequited love, turned to destruction, sent Parry to prison for a murder he did not commit. I described her as playing someone who is both the agent of destruction and a person who has been genuinely damaged. I want to add something about the specific scene in which Madge confronts Parry, now bandaged, unrecognizable, and does not know who she is talking to. Parry, in the first-person camera, looks at Madge. Madge looks at a bandaged stranger. She does not know this is the man she destroyed. The camera, his eyes watching the woman who ruined his life, who is looking at him without knowing who he is. The specific dramatic irony, available only through the first-person camera. In an objective camera, you would see Bogart bandaged face and Moorehead, and you would know what both of them know and don't know. The dramatic irony, visible but external. In the first-person camera, you are inside the irony. You are Parry looking at Madge. You know everything. She knows nothing. The experience of watching the person who destroyed you look at you without recognition. This is not observed, it is felt. The scene. The first-person camera's most precise dramatic use. I want to describe what Dark Passage's specific experiment passed on to the filmmakers who came after it. Not the first-person camera as a sustained technique. That particular experiment was not repeated in the same form. Lady in the Lake, made the same year, used it for an entire film and was largely considered a failure. What Dark Passage passed on. The understanding of when the first-person camera works and when it does not. The filmmakers who would later use brief first-person camera for specific sequences, for dreams, for moments of shock, for the experience of looking at something with specific intensity. These filmmakers learned from Dark Passage's 56 minutes what those 56 minutes proved. The first-person camera works in physical urgency. The first-person camera works in emotional intensity. The first-person camera works when what the character is seeing is charged with specific meaning that the character's response cannot fully express. This knowledge, distilled from Dark Passage's experiment, from both the working and the not working. The interesting failure has been teaching filmmakers for 10 years. It will continue teaching them. There is a scene I did not describe in the previous episode. Early in the first-person section, Parry, hiding in Irene's apartment, discovers that she has a photograph of him on her wall. She has been following his case in the newspapers. She knows who he is. The first-person camera, his eyes discovering the photograph. He is looking at himself. Not a mirror, a newspaper photograph. The specific quality of looking at the image of yourself that has been reproduced and distributed, that exists in the world outside your control, that represents you without being you. Parry looks at the photograph of himself. The camera, his eyes. We see the photograph. We do not see Bogart. We see the image of Bogart that was published in the newspaper. The photograph of a face we have not yet seen in the film. The specific layers. The character looking at the image of himself. The audience looking at the image of the actor they have not yet seen. The camera being the eyes that connect both looking. This is the most cinematically complex use of the first-person camera in the film, and I missed it in the first viewing. The second viewing, I found it. In the previous episode, I said, Dark Passage is not a great film. I want to revise this. Not to say it is a great film, to say the assessment of a film as great or not great is insufficient for a film that is doing something that has not been done before. Dark Passage is not great by the measures of greatness I have applied to other films in this series: scope, emotional complexity, technical mastery in service of a unified vision. Dark Passage is extraordinary by a different measure. The measure of something that opens a door. The film opens a door into a room that filmmakers had not entered before. The room, the interior of a character's experience, as the camera's primary grammar. The film goes into the room. It explores the room. It discovers what the room contains and what it does not contain. The exploration, imperfect. The room, larger than the film can map. But the door is open. A film that opens a door that was not open before. This is an achievement that great and not great cannot adequately measure. Dark Passage opened a door. That is its specific achievement. I was wrong to say not great without saying this. I want to describe the specific person who becomes a cult follower of Dark Passage, because the description illuminates the film. This person, not a casual viewer, someone who has already seen the major films, who has worked through the canonical list, who is looking for something that the canonical list does not provide. The canonical list, the great films, the films that are great in the specific ways that greatness is usually defined. What the cine-curious person is looking for: films that ask questions the great films don't ask. Films that fail in interesting ways. Films that reveal the mechanics of cinema by straining against those mechanics. Dark Passage. Exactly this film. The first-person camera strains against the convention of the objective camera. The straining, visible. The conventions, revealed by the straining. To watch Dark Passage carefully is to understand something about what the objective camera does by watching what happens when it is replaced. The cine-curious person learns from the replacement. The cult, built on what can be learned. I have described 4 Bogart Bacall films in this series: To Have and Have Not, The Big Sleep, Key Largo, Dark Passage. I want to describe where Dark Passage sits in the arc. To Have and Have Not, the first. The electricity of discovery. 2 people finding each other. The camera as witness. The Big Sleep, the second. More settled. The electricity present, but not the first electricity. The ease of people who know each other. Key Largo, the third. Different in register. The film is darker. Bacall's role is more contained. The chemistry is present, but subordinated to the weight of the material. Dark Passage, the fourth. The most formally experimental, also paradoxically, the most intimate. Because the first-person camera removes the distance between the viewer and the Bogart character. Bacall is seen with the specific close attention of someone who loves her. The arc. First electricity, settled ease, dark weight, intimate experiment. Dark Passage, the odd one. The one that tries something the others don't try. The one that fails differently than the others and succeeds differently. The 4 films together. A complete portrait of what it looks like when 2 specific people make films together, and the films record not just performances, but a relationship developing through years of shared work. The first viewing, analytical. I was watching for what the technique does. The second viewing, something changed. The change. I stopped analyzing and started watching. When you stop analyzing Dark Passage and simply watch it, when you accept the contract of the first frame, when you let the camera be your eye without thinking about whether the camera is succeeding at being your eye, The experience is different from analysis. It is more absorbed. Not because the technique is better than I said it was, because accepting the technique, rather than evaluating it, changes the relationship to the film. Most films, you accept the camera automatically. You do not notice it. The camera is invisible. Dark Passage, the camera calls attention to itself constantly. It announces itself as the experiment it is. But if you accept the announcement, if you say yes to the experiment and stop measuring whether the experiment is succeeding, the specific experience of being inside the camera is more complete than my analytical account suggested. The film is better when you stop thinking about whether it is good. This is not true of most films. It is true of Dark Passage. The previous episode, What Did Not Work? This episode, What Did? The full assessment, holding both. Dark Passage is a film that attempted something unprecedented and succeeded at it for portions of its running time and failed at it for other portions. And in both the succeeding and the failing, it produced knowledge that could not have been produced any other way. The first-person camera, more powerful than I initially acknowledged in moments of physical urgency, emotional intensity, and the specific scene of Perry looking at his own photograph. The first-person camera, less powerful than a film needs it to be in extended conversation scenes, where the camera's inability to simulate the imprecision of the human eye becomes visible and disruptive. The reveal. A genuine achievement that I undervalued. Not only the satisfaction of finally seeing Bogart's face, but the specific experience of losing the interiority that made the 56-minute withholding more than a gimmick. The cult? Earned. Not by greatness, by the specific quality of a film that opens a door into a room filmmakers had not visited, and by what can be learned in that room. My revised assessment? An interesting failure that is also a genuine achievement. Not both despite each other, both because they are the same thing viewed from different angles. Dark Passage earns its cult not by being a great film, but by being the film that most precisely shows what cinema becomes when it tries to be something cinema has not tried to be, and that in the trying and the failing and the occasionally succeeding produces knowledge about what cinema is that the successful films, by succeeding within the conventions they share, cannot produce. The first time I saw it, I described the failure. The second time, I found what the failure revealed. Both visits necessary. Some films reward one viewing. Dark Passage rewards two. Come back next week.